CySA Plus, Domain 1, Threat and Vulnerability Management, Part 3. This is so part 3 of this series of video for the CySA Plus certification. Question 21. You have just been hired as a junior cybersecurity analyst. The orientation process involves shadowing a senior analyst. To gauge your current knowledge level, the senior analyst is testing your ability to recognize various tools of the trade. He gives you a quick look at a tool's GUI. So what type of tool is displayed here? And these are the different choices. This one. The correct answer here is Packet Analyzer B. The tool shown is Wireshark, which is a packet analyzer. Packet analyzers are also called sniffers and sometimes protocol analyzers. This type of tool captures traffic on the network. Question number 22. You need to deploy a security patch on several servers. Currently, you have a contract in place with a third party that states that this service can only be updated during a regularly scheduled maintenance period. Unfortunately, the third party will not allow unscheduled maintenance because of availability needs. Which of the following is the inhibitor to this remediation? The correct answer is here, it's D, SLA. A service level agreement, SLA, is the inhibitor to this remediation. The scenario specifically stated that a contract is in place with a third party that states that these services can only be updated during a regularly scheduled maintenance period. An SLA is a contract between two parties to provide service and includes performance metrics that must be met. Question 23. You are working with a team to identify the requirements of your company's information security vulnerability management process. Which of the following is not considered during this step? The correct answer here is C, risk appetite. While identifying the requirements of your company's information security vulnerability management process, risk appetite is not considered. Risk appetite is considered during the second step of the process, establishing the scanning frequency. Identifying the requirements of the vulnerability management process includes identifying the regulatory environment, the corporate policy, the asset inventory, and data classification. You should assess each of these to determine how they will affect vulnerability management. For asset inventory, you will need to classify assets depending on whether they are critical or non-critical. Critical assets will need to be scanned more frequently for vulnerabilities than non-critical assets, for example. The steps of implementing an information security vulnerability management process are as follows. 1. Identify the requirements. 2. Establish a scanning frequency. 3. Configure the tools to perform the vulnerability scan. 4. Execute the vulnerability scan. 5. Generate the reports. 6. Implement remediation. And 7. Ongoing scanning and continuous monitoring. Question 24. A team is working to design the information security vulnerability management process for a large company. They have identified all the requirements for this process. What is the next step that they should complete? The correct answer here is B, establish a scanning frequency. So the next step that the team should complete is to establish the scanning frequency in this case. The steps of completing the information security vulnerability management process are as follows, as we have already discussed in previous questions. Question 25. You are the security analyst for a company that must comply with PCI DSS standards. You have the 4 vulnerability scan reports from the last year. You received a new vulnerability scan report and compare it to the old reports. During this comparison, you notice that there are several vulnerabilities in all the reports that you know are false positives. What should you do? The correct answer here is D. Add a note to the latest report that the identified vulnerabilities are false positives. You should add a note to the latest report that identified vulnerabilities as false positives. This is an example of reconciling results. And this solution ensures that the vulnerabilities are still in the report. PCI DSS may require that an independent assessor be brought in to verify that the vulnerabilities are indeed false positives. You should not configure exceptions for the false positive in the vulnerability management system so that you remain compliant with PCI DSS standards. These standards do not allow the usage of exceptions in this manner. And you should not remove the false positive from any of the reports either, because the automated tool found the vulnerabilities. The PCI DSS standard requires that you report them. However, you can note that you have identified them as false positives. Question 26. Which of the following is the first step in a pen test? The correct answer here is B. Document information about the target system or device. The steps in performing a penetration test, as discussed previously, are as follows. 1. Document information about the target systems or device. 2. Gather information about attack methods against the target systems or device. This includes performing port scans. 3. Identify the known vulnerabilities of the target system or device. 4. Execute attacks against the target systems or device to gain user and privileged access. 5. Document the results of the penetration test and report the findings to management with suggestions for remedial action. Another point to note is that documenting the results of the penetration test and report the findings to management with suggestions to remedial action is obviously very important. Question 27. Your vulnerability analysis scan has identified several vulnerabilities and assigned them a CVSS score. Issue A has a score of 4.3. Issue B has a score of 9.1. Issue C has a score of 1.6. And issue D has a score of 7.7. Which issue should take priority? The correct answer here is D, issue B. Issue B should take priority because it has the highest CVSS value of 9.1, which is considered a critical issue. The Common Vulnerability Scoring System, CVSS, is a system of ranking vulnerabilities that are discovered based on predefined metrics. This system ensures that the most critical vulnerabilities can be easily identified and addressed after a vulnerability test is met. Scores are awarded on a scale of 0 to 10, with values having the following ranks. 0 means no issues. 0.1 to 3.9 means low. 4.0 to 6.9 means median. 7.0 to 8.9 means high. And 9.0 to 10 means critical. In most cases, companies will attempt to resolve the vulnerabilities with the highest score. However, in some cases, you may find that a less critically a score vulnerability can be resolved relatively quickly. In that case, you may decide to handle that vulnerability. Also, keep in mind that tool updates and plugins for vulnerability scanners are just as important as updates are to anti-malware and antivirus products. Tool updates and plugins allow the scanner to recognize the latest vulnerabilities that have been discovered. It is important to keep the vulnerability scanning tool you use up to date. Question 28. You need to provide your company with a report regarding potential security-related software flaws. You need to use standardized names so that a security analyst contractor can understand the report. Which SCOP component should you use? The correct answer here is C, CVE. You should use the Common Vulnerability and Exposures, CVE, which provides standardized names for security-related software flaws. The Common Platform Enumeration, CPE, provides standard names for product names and versions. Common Configuration Enumeration, CCE, provides standard names for system configuration issues. And the Common Vulnerability and Scoring System, CVSS, provides a standardized metric that measures and describes the severity of security-related software flaws. Keep in mind that you may need to provide reports on identified vulnerabilities to different audiences. While technical staff may be able to read and comprehend the automatic reports generated by a vulnerability scanner, you may need to create an executive report for other non-technical staff that contains information that is more easily understood. While having the vulnerability scanner deliver reports automatically, delivery may be preferred, it is not the best solution. Understanding automated versus manual distribution issues will ensure that you, as the security analyst, can provide your audience with information they need and understand. Automatic distribution distributes the reports automatically through internal mechanisms, often via email. Manual distribution would require more effort on the security analyst to ensure that the appropriate individuals receive the correct report. Question 29. You just observed a meeting of the risk evaluation team. They were assigning the values of high, medium, and low to some threats that they had identified. What part of risk evaluation are they performing? The correct answer here is D, technical impact review. They are performing technical impact review. This is the process of assessing the potential impact of an event that is technical in nature. Once all assets have been identified and their value to the organization has been established, specific threats to each asset are identified. An attempt must be made to establish both the likelihood of the threat being realized as well as the impact to the organization should that occur. This can be done by assigning values like high, medium, and low to the threats to describe their impact and likelihood. Question 30. Bob is analyzing the results of a vulnerability scan. He examines a vulnerability detected on one of his servers that has a CVSS breakdown as follows. So again, we have the attack vector, A, which means adjacent network, the access complexity, H, which means high, the authentication, M, which means multiple mechanisms are needed to authenticate. The confidentiality means N means none. The integrity, the C means complete, and the availability, which means none. So based on that, then which of the following statement is true about this vulnerability? The correct answer is A. Exploiting this vulnerability would result in total compromise of system integrity because the integrity score was C, which means complete. And that means that all information in the system could be compromised. This concludes part 3 of Domain 1, Threat and Vulnerability Management, of the review question for the CySA Plus certification exam. Next, we will continue with part 4.